Are you an English teacher? You want to be an English teacher? You want to learn how to do it better? Why, I'm Joey Arnold. I'm an American English teacher, and I'm in Vietnam. And I want to tell you the top 10 things that teachers really need. From the least important to the most important. So number 10, you really got to smile. You got to be uplifting and motivating and encouraging all the time. You should not be too negative and pessimistic and looking always on the wrong side of the bed, on the wrong side of things. You got to be a little more open-minded and uplifting and encouraging, because if you're not, then your students won't either. And it's as simple as that. And you got to really be ready for that, because they're already going to be pretty negative most of the time, and that's pretty much how it is. And so you really need to be ready about that. And so smiling is very important, and smiling could be number 1 on the list. Number 9, patience. You got to be patient for the students, because sometimes they're really slow and they're pretty dumb, and maybe you shouldn't call them dumb, but you really got to be ready, and you got to really wait, and you got to give them time, and you got to forgive them, because they're going to make mistakes, and you're going to make mistakes, and like the golden rule says, you treat other people how you want to be treated, and you want other people to forgive you, so you should forgive them first and trust them first. And you got to be slow and steady, because slow and steady wins the race. No pain, no gain. You're like a turtle, and you can win. And you have to remember that quality is so much better, more important than quantity. So you got to be slow, and you got to be steady, and you got to be patient. Number 8, you got to be flexible, open, teachable. You got to be able. You got to be available and daring and willing. Don't be so closed-minded in the different things that you believe in, how you teach and how you do things, because sometimes you could be wrong. Even though you're a teacher and you spend many hours and many years studying to get a degree or something, you gotta realize that things are always like evolving, and things are getting better, and you gotta be open to that, because you don't always have all the answers. And number 7, you gotta make time. So, you gotta be flexible, and you gotta make time. Make time for your students. Don't just give them a time limit and say, okay, you got 5 minutes to talk to me. You can make some rules when you're playing some games, when you're teaching English, and that's okay, but sometimes you really gotta be available for them, and you gotta give them the time, and because sometimes, or a lot of the time, it's gonna take time for them to open up, and you gotta be more trustworthy, and you gotta give them a little bit of yourself before they're gonna give you some of them. So you gotta really be ready for that and be there for them, like Michael Jackson. I'll be there, I'll be there. So don't be so conditional, like giving them so much like conditions, like, oh, you have to do this and you have to do that, and if you don't, then you're gonna be a goner, like the Titanic going down for a tsunami, or from an iceberg, the big boat, the big ship in the water, and it sinks. Like don't be so like stubborn and so close-minded, and I mean, it's important to be like really serious, like a father, and give them rules like a teacher should, but sometimes you gotta be a little more open-minded and give them a little leeway and flexibility, and you gotta really make time for them, and be more unconditional and generous, because that's what love and grace is all about, and that's some of the best qualities that you can have in this whole world, in the whole universe. Number 6, you gotta be available. You gotta be flexible, you gotta make time, you gotta be available. And, give them your contact information so that they can contact you, because you're not really available if they can't really communicate to you. You need to somehow have that, or have some like a manager, an assistant, or like some office workers, or some people that work at an English center or at a school or something. They can talk to the students for you, depending on where you're teaching English. You could be teaching English. You might be teaching English in a country that speaks English, like America, Australia, England. Some of those countries, it's good because they already know English, and so then you teach them even more English and like advanced English. And like I grew up in America in 1985. I went to homeschool, then I went to high school, and during high school and during college I learned more English. Even though I'm a native English speaker, I can learn more, and you can always learn more about anything. And so you always gotta be learning more, and you gotta be fast and faster on your feet, and almost like dancing, you just gotta be there all the time. Like Michael Jackson, he always went back and he continued to practice through his life, and Michael Jordan would continue to make more baskets, and he would practice because that's what we do. And even piano players and musicians, they do these things and they continue to practice, and it's very important. And we really gotta continue. We gotta continue to do that, otherwise we get out of practice, and if you don't use it, you lose it, and no pain, no gain. And you know, you really gotta just like, you gotta be there for them. You know, you gotta smile, you gotta be patient, you gotta be flexible, and make time for them, and be available. You really gotta love what you do, and do what you love. And sometimes people can't do that, and they don't really have that kind of world. But if you teach English in a English-speaking country, it's pretty good. But then it's kind of harder in some ways, because then you gotta give them a little bit more because they already know English, and you gotta give them a little bit more. Like the way I'm talking right now, it's mostly for the people that are more advanced in English, and hopefully they can understand what I'm saying, as long as the quality of the audio is good enough for this video. And I really hope it is. And so I try my best. But you know, anyways, like if you speak English, and you know, if you're an English teacher in another country, then it's a little bit harder, because like you probably should learn the languages. Like you go to Mexico, you learn Spanish. You go to Vietnam, you learn Vietnamese. For example, you go to Japan, you learn Japanese. And you can get an assistant who can help you, a TA, teaching assistant, that can help you, and that's pretty good. You just have to remember that it's a little bit different if you teach English in a country that you know, don't speak English naturally, because they have another language. It's a little different, a little harder, but then they tend to be a little more generous when you teach English to them, because they know that it's a little more rare. So they know that it's valuable, and they know it can make their lives a little bit better. I guess that's debatable sometimes, to some extent. Some people say, well, I don't think English can help me or help people have a better life. But it really can. It just depends on a couple of variables. Anyways, back to my list. You know, like I was saying, you know, number 6, you gotta be available. You gotta give them your contact information. That's your phone number, your what do you call it? Address at your home, at your work, and your work schedule, and your office hours. When can they call you? When can they contact you? When can they? When can they? And if you tell them something, you know, keep your word, and follow through, and do it. If you say you're gonna answer the phone, or you know, something like that. You know, used to be available on Facebook and other social media networks and websites, anything on the internet, you know, Wi-Fi, you know, used to be there. Just like Michael Jackson was there until he died or something, and you should be there. You know, Facebook, Twitter, email, and other websites are, it's pretty good, and it's more modern, because you don't want to be like an old person who says something like, oh, I'm not on Facebook, I'm not on Skype, you know, like, you gotta be there, you gotta try your best to be available, you gotta be as available as possible, make it easy for people to be able to talk to you, to ask you questions and stuff. Don't be too close-minded, don't be too negative. Smile a little. You gotta really go to where the people are. Don't always expect people to come to you, because sometimes they won't, unfortunately. I mean, it'd be great if everybody came to you and we lived in some kind of utopia kind of world, but it doesn't always work that way, and it's kind of unfortunate. But Merry Christmas, and have it your way. But then again, you can't have it your way. You know, Burger King likes to say, have it your way, and McDonald's says, you know, I'm loving it, but sometimes you're not gonna love it, and sometimes you're not gonna have it your way, and sometimes it's not going to be good to the last drop. So you got to keep your eyes open, your mind open, your heart ready and steady, because life is a ride. Life is a roller coaster. It's like, you know, you might fall, you might stumble, and it's going to be scary, like some kind of horror film, but you just got to keep on going. You got to believe, and you got to, you know, have the hope. Like, because like Bob the Builder says and Obama says, like, yes we can, and may the force be with you, and may the power protect you. You know that from Star Wars and the Power Rangers, and you gotta go, and like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles always say, "Cowabunga, dude, just keep on going." So number 5, give them options, choices, power, control. Don't just force them to, oh, we're gonna study this boring topic about cars or makeup or something that they don't want to do, or, you know, give them some options like, hey guys, you wanna play a game, or you want to talk about a topic, or you want to ask me questions, or do you want me to ask you questions? You know, do you want to do this? You want to do that? You want to go here? Do you want to talk now? Do you want to talk now? Do you? You really gotta talk to your students, and don't be too much of a fuddy-duddy, that's like a, you know, like a parent that's too negative and too controlling, and like almost like a helicopter parent, but in a bad kind of way. You really gotta think about them a little more than you think about yourself. You know, you think about yourself and you think about what you know, and then you think you can tell people what you already know, and you think they're gonna automatically learn everything that you know, but it's not that easy, because everybody is different and they learn in different ways. And so you gotta really give them the options, because they sometimes know better than you, even though like a lot of times the teachers and the parents and the leaders know better than the people and the civilians, and because like maybe we have a higher IQ and we're smarter and we're better and cooler, and that's why we're at the top of the ladder of the food chain, you know, we're up there, and because we're better than them, and gosh darn it, people like us, and kind of things like that, you know. But at the same time, it's not always like that, unfortunately. They know some things about themselves that you don't know exactly, and you also want them to feel better, and that's why you smile, that's why you're there for them, you give them time, and you ask them questions, because it helps them open up a little bit more. It's like an icebreaker, and an icebreaker is very important. An icebreaker is something that you have at the beginning of a conversation, and you really want to have that, you know, like, because you want to open your students up, and if you don't open them up, then they can't learn as much. And so, you know, learning needs to be amazing, and it needs to be fun, and it needs to have options. But if they're not open up, they're really not gonna stay with you long enough, and that's not gonna really be good. And so you really gotta think about those things, and you really gotta keep them, you gotta hook them, you know, it's like a candy bar. It's like a company like Coca-Cola, or, you know, all these famous companies out there. They find ways to get their customers, and your students, your pupils, they are like your customers, your clients, and you gotta hook them for life, from the cradle to the grave. You get them when they're still in the cradle, like when they're still like a baby, or as young as possible. You get them to fall in love with you, like you're a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and they fall in love with you and they want to hang out with you. Like, that's what McDonald's does, you know. They have the Ronald McDonald mascot, and you see that clown and you fall in love with him, you fall in love with the food, and you continue to eat from McDonald's until you become really fat, and then you die, but you're happy, and they're happy. You're happy because you're eating, and they're happy because they get money, and that's how business work. And unfortunately, to some extent, this English teaching gig, you know, this kind of work, this kind of job, this kind of career thing, is a business to some extent, even though it's also has something to do with humanitarianism, you know. It helps people, you know, it's good, and you can volunteer, and you could make the world a better place with one oatmeal at a time. That's all what I always said on TV one time. I said it. But anyways, you know, it's very important to to be available for people and to try to help people as much as possible. So you give them choices, you give them options and power, because then they feel better, and if they feel better, then you feel better and they learn more. Don't just force them to do everything that you want them to do, especially when you might be wrong sometimes, and sometimes you are, and sometimes I am, and I gotta be strong enough and you know, mature enough to understand that I don't know everything. Sometimes I say to my students, I don't know that word, or I don't know something, and if they're smart enough, they'll understand that it's okay, because we don't know everything, but we gotta be educated enough to be able to adapt to those situations and to say, well, you know, I could Google it, I can find out more information and tell you more another time, or we can talk about it more and try to figure out an answer together. But sometimes we don't always know the answers to all the questions. I used to ask my mother questions, and she would learn because she never thought about those questions, and she would not know the answer. Like little kids, when they're younger, we ask a lot of questions like, why is the sky blue? Why did this chicken cross the road? You know, why this? Why, mommy? Why? Why? Where are you? What are you doing? Why are you doing that? Oh, how are babies made? Number 4, teach them at their level, at their speed, in ways that can better help them. You got to think about how to help them in the best ways possible. And that's why you ask them questions, and that's why you give them control and options, so that you can learn more about them and about what are the best styles and methods needed for them. It's very important because everybody learns differently. Some people learn more with doing, some people learn more with the hearing or the seeing. For the most part, we learn more in an interactive kind of way, in a multimedia kind of way, where we need to hear it and see it, and we need to do some kind of action, and we need to try to memorize it, and we need to try to say it again, and we need to reprocess it, you know. And we need to go through repetition and do it over and over, like repeat after me. We need to do that over and over. We need to get it stuck in our head. It needs to be very important. Words need to be very important. If words are not very important, then we don't really remember them. If we don't have a reason to remember the words, then we don't really remember the words, and we don't really care. And a lot of times we go through the educational system and we memorize things for a test, for an exam, and then we try to get the answers right, and then we forget it all because we just want a really good score on a test during school as we grow up. And then in high school, you know, in school, in college, in university, we just want to memorize things. Like a lot of times we just study for the test the night before a big exam, you know, like during the final week of a semester or a quarter, and we forget it, and it's not always a good way of learning. And so some of the styles of learning are not the best style. There's like some of the old fashioned ways of learning, and those things are not the best. Sometimes you really gotta find new ways of doing things, new methods. Like for example, when you go to the dentist, you don't want to continue to do the same things that the dentist used to do like 50 years ago or even 20 years ago. They continue to refine the way they do things at the doctors, at the dentist, in a lot of different places. You know, technology advances, the methodology of the ways they do things continue to advance, and so does the teaching. You know, but too often we continue to study from really old textbooks that are really outdated and archaic and too old, you know, and we learn words that are like not used really. And it's important to realize where we are and try to give the students things that are more applicable, things that are more current, things that they can actually use in a day-to-day basis, you know, in an everyday circumstance, you know, kind of thing. Like, it's important to be more current, to be to be more useful and not just to give them canned devotions, canned things, lessons that are, prearranged, lessons that somebody else thought of in another country, and that's not always the best thing to do. Sometimes you need to create your own material, your own syllabuses, your own plan of attack in order to help them in the best way, because you need to be able to adapt the things to the world that you're in, because sometimes things are not very understandable. Like for example, somebody could write a textbook and they can tell you how to learn something, or they give you information, but maybe they wrote it in a different country and they wrote it like 50 years ago, but now it's been 50 years and maybe you're in another country. Maybe they wrote something in America, but now you're in Australia or China and you're in Japan, and it's 50 years in the future, and there's a lot of things that those people in another culture and another time may not understand. Or even if you're in the same country, things change over time, and we gotta be open to all those things. And it's just very important. And so that's why we really gotta be up to the task, because teachers are some of the best people in the world. Parents are teachers, and teachers are teachers, and it's just very important to know what you're doing, because it's like you're responsible for the next generation, and so you have a higher, like, what do you call it, higher responsibility, like, because of how much influence you have on people. It's much bigger than celebrities. Believe it or not, even though a lot of people talk about their celebrities, people that they love, and it's important, but the teachers are almost as important as the parents, and so you really got to make sure that you don't mess things up, and so it's very important. This job is fundamental, and it's very important, and a lot of people take it for granted, and they don't really think about it as much as they should. And so we really gotta think about that. So you gotta smile and be patient and flexible and open. Make time for your students and be available for them. You give them your contact information and give them options and choices and power and control, so that they feel better about themselves, so they can learn better, because they feel like they're in control. And so it's like a make your own adventure book. Or it's like a video game, and you're in control, and you get to choose where to go, and then you feel like you're interacting with the learning. And when the students interact more, then they feel like they have more power. And everybody loves power, and so they become addicted to that feeling, to those that kind of stimulation, to those hormones, those